Game Ball, the ultimate ammunition, providing you with this week's episode of the Tweedl Pod. Hi everybody, welcome back to the Tweedl Podcast. Myself, Rob Fennick. Probably we've secured our most elusive guest.
He's just turned up this time. He has not turned up for twice now, is it, or something like that?
In his defence, he didn't agree to the first and then the second. Well, listen, we're not excusing you, Iain, but
he's here.
Thanks for coming. Iain Parker from the CPSA.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me along
several
times.
It's good to have you, Mr. Parker.
You're welcome.
Keeping all right?
Keeping all right. Busy as always.
Yeah.
But really good to be here. Obviously, watched the podcast with interest. I saw one of our directors and one of our obviously clay shooting royalty on, Richard.
Yeah. Richard Foles.
I thought you took it easy on him.
He's a star, though, isn't he?
Yeah.
He is. Absolutely.
It must be fascinating having him because he's on your board, isn't he?
He is, and I met Richard not long after I'd started, when he wasn't on the board and he was thinking of coming on, and I went down, hadn't really met him once, I think, before, went down and had dinner with him, and got to know him a bit. Yeah. And it is that thing, I think a lot of people always say, oh, Richard can be a bit standoffish or a bit, but once you get talking to him about game shooting, once you get talking to him about clay shooting or competitions.
What he doesn't know is not...
he's so passionate about shooting.
Loads of people have sent me messages saying, "Oh, it was really interesting to listen to him. You know, I don't know him enough. I don't know much about him, but it was fascinating. And I love the fact
he's just so humble.
And when he's competitive, when you see him go into competition mode, he's and as you say, great for the CPSA to have that knowledge on the board, have that passion on the board.
Yeah, and actually, while we're on the topic, shameless plug, you can now win a day's shooting infield coaching with Richard Foles on Tweedl.com. £10 a ticket, well, £9.99 a ticket at Pennell. Carrying on.
This is what happens, Iain. Okay, you get a shameless. But anything you want to mention here while we're on it now, Charlie? Anything? Yeah. Charlie's single at the moment, so any single girls, please feel free. Charlie will put a plug in there. What else?
Tweedl caps are discounted.
Oh, for God's sake! Please, enough. It was great catching up with him, and even better to know that he started as a C-class shot. He was sent us a picture of his badge the other day, saying just to prove I started as C-class.
That was a bit of a ringer, though. I would have thought.
Could you imagine?
Yeah. So, in taking it back, we always sort of go back to the start with our guests. You are now the chief exec of the CPSA. What's the story? How did you get to that point? Have you always been involved in shooting? Were they short of somebody to do a job, and they ended up with you? How have you ended up in the position you're in?
Please come in. Please come and do it.
All of the above. Yes, I've always been involved in shooting from a personal point of view, like a lot of people, air guns in the back garden from when I was a kid. Then got into rifle shooting quite a bit, and when you could do it, into pistol shooting back in the 80s. And then... just sort of carried on. Mainly did a lot of rifle shooting to start with, and then got into clay shooting in a small way, mainly pre-game season, and then did a bit of game days, and then got into deer stalking a lot, and that's probably one of the main things from a shooting point of view, besides clay shooting. From a job point of view, and then how did I end up at the CPSA? Almost through, I was at Bisley Shooting. I just sold part of a company that I owned, and was rifle shooting there, and someone mentioned the CPSA job to me and said, oh, you'd enjoy doing that. You shoot a bit and a bit of background in business. I'd never heard of the CPSA, to be honest.
Right.
No. And
what year is this?
Oh, what is it? Nearly 7 years ago now.
Right. Is that when you joined? Yeah, I remember when you joined. Good grief.
Yeah.
It's 7 years ago. It's quite
7 years ago in July. So, we're sort of 6.5 years in now.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
But then the actual interview process was quite a long process. We went through, I think, 4 or 5 interviews with the board of directors at each one of those. So it was quite a process.
Interested.
Yeah, but you wondered what you're getting yourself into.
And it was quite an interesting job because it's obviously a not-for-profit membership association, national governing body, all of those 3 things. That wasn't my business background. I'd been involved in the sports industry, in a marketing licensing business before I came to the CPSA. Very much profit, product, profit.
Yeah.
That was pretty much what
the
was
3
drilled
Ps.
into you. Yeah, and even when I worked in the golf industry for a Japanese company, Mizuno, back in the early 90s, right the way through to Animal, when I sort of worked there and we built that up as a business. I'd worked all that time in the sports industry. But when I came to the CPSA, and even when I went for the interview, the one thing I sort of said was, you need to run it, even though it's a not-for-profit membership association, national governing body, all those things, you need to run it like a business.
Yeah.
And I still do today. That's what I do. We try and...
Was that your biggest focus for change, Ian? Was it or not?
I don't know. I don't think it was, maybe not an absolute change from my predecessor's point of view. It's just, I sort of look at it very much that our product is our membership. So I focus the team on what do we have to do to give good value for money, get our message out there of what we do.
Yeah.
We have to look at the membership because people join the CPSA for all different reasons. People find it quite odd that only sort of a third of our membership actually shoot registered shoots.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we've been trying to change that over time to promote the registered shoots, to promote the championships. And I look very much at our championships as being part of the product offering and to make the championships bigger and better, which I think we've achieved in the last 5 years.
And so what are the other people joining the CPSA for? Insurance?
Yeah, partly insurance, partly out of I'm a clay shooter. I shoot every week or once a month with my mates. I go to these 2 different grounds and I want to be a member of the national governing body.
Yeah.
And it's always been that way. When I look back at the data, as an association, we've been around as the CPSA since 1928. Actually, as an association, we were called various things before that. But we were one of the oldest associations in the world for clay shooting, 1892.
And so 7 years ago, how many members were there?
This one is not going to make me look good because we've actually gone down in that time.
Oh, Sam, you horrible individual.
How do you manage that?
Yeah. I can't even say that was a focused goal.
Right.
It most definitely wasn't. Obviously, we've had, the issues and the challenges we're up against. Obviously, COVID, we dropped. We lost sort of 10% of our membership during COVID, with people just not renewing. And then when we came out of COVID, we had a surge of people rejoining. But then obviously we didn't. Some people had just given up the sport. And then we've sort of edged away. And then since COVID, since the end of that, we've had cost of living crisis. And that is our biggest threat to the association, is with members not rejoining, giving up the sport. There's always a churn of people who join up, take the sport up. They'll come to a corporate day, they'll have a go. They get into the sport 2 or 3 years later, 4 years later, they give it up. So there's always that churn within the sport. I think also the big challenges we've got now are the cost of shooting gets leveled at me every single week, every single time we ring up a member that lapses and said, your membership's run out. Why?
It probably doesn't mean they're giving up shooting in many aspects. It just means they might not be doing competition shooting or whatever it might be.
And then some of them will just stop. I mean, we've got a chap, Bobby, who rings up every single lapse member and tries to get them to rejoin, but he also finds
asks them why.
Why? Have we done something wrong? Can we improve on something? And in the last couple of years, 18 months especially, 90% of the reason that he's given, that he was never given before, was the cost.
Wow.
I just can't afford to do it anymore. It's a luxury. So I've got to give something up because, like all of us, our mortgage has got more, our electric bills have got more.
Yeah.
So I've got to give something up that costs me £300, £400, £500 a month.
And specifically, what part of the cost? Is it cartridges?
I think it's everything. If you look at even getting to a shoot, and it's the same for the ground owners, it's the same for our competitions. Most of the grounds, they're run on electric. All the traps are run on electric.
You've got to make a profit.
Cartridges have all gone up. That's probably a big thing that the shooters will say. It's the disposable item.
Now with minimum wage and things like that, you imagine anybody employing referees for registered competitions. It's all going to make a difference, isn't it?
And I think that's just the reality of all of our food bills have gone up, running a car's gone up. So clay shooting's not going to escape that.
No.
And that's probably one of the things that they'll level at me, is saying, Iain, we're just about to start our national, regional AGMs that I go to, and we sit down with the members and they ask questions, and usually always one of them is, what are you going to do about the cost of shooting? And it's the one thing I really have to be dead honest and just sort of say there's nothing I can do about it. I can't make cartridges.
It's just life. It's just life at the moment in the times we're in.
Yeah. So that's definitely one of the challenges that's hitting membership, and the other one's legislation and how hard it is compared to previous time, to get a certificate. People that come along, try the sport, they might do it with us at the game fair, they might come along and do it at, here at Churchills, do a have a go, shoot 30, 50 plays, love it. I don't think anybody doesn't like it. Everyone loves it. And then they go along and say, right, I'm going to get my certificate. And the average now is 8 to 12 months to get a certificate. So that's holding back, and it holds back gun sales. It holds back lots of things, and it holds back, are they going to join the CPSA if they can't go and shoot?
Sort of loses regularly. It loses momentum a little bit, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But that's definitely a factor.
You mentioned legislation. You do a huge amount of work with legislation, don't you? And various bodies and various committees and everything else. I mean, that's the one thing I'm always been surprised when we've spoken about. I mean, you're always in various meetings about legislation and changes of legislation.
Yeah, and it's an absolute critical part of the CPSA and the role when you look at, it's not the most exciting bit by any means. People usually roll their eyes when you start talking about legislation and go, oh, yeah. But yeah, going up to London, I sit on the, BSSC, British Sporting Shooting Council, and there's a whole group of shooting bodies that sit on that. And they're all championing and fighting the causes of shooting. But legislation's never ending. It can be anything to do with licensing, or it could be the lead issue.
Can you give us an update on the lead issue, Iain? You're probably in the best place to answer that question at the moment.
I am. And again,
because a lot of people think it's sort of related to game shooting, but actually it's not, is it?
No. And it's obviously when it started years and years ago, over 20 years ago now, when they changed it for waterfowl shooting. Where we're at now is just the sort of 25 years later. That's progressed on from that. They were always going to look at other types of ammunition, be it shotgun ammunition for clay or for game shooting, or rifle ammunition. And I've been involved in it for the last 4 years now. And we're at the back end of that, and I expect in the next month HSE will be, as they published, putting out a statement of where we're going to be, what their formal process is.
Right.
And I think that's, I'm expecting that probably end of this month.
Yeah. And it looks like it's all going to happen. When it happens, it'll probably be clay and game shooting. It'll just be all together, or not?
Yeah. And I think that's where I believe it's going to end up from a transition point of view. But we've been fighting over the last 3-4 years with HSE, and then in turn, it'll then go to DEFRA to have a if I don't think the case of them ever not going to change. It's been a progression, as I say, over those years. It's just, how do we manage that?
Yeah.
And how do we manage it from a end user point of view, right the way through to Olympic level? How do we manage that from a competition point of view? So that's something that I've been focusing on. And then you've got to look at the cartridge companies, who are all our partners. A lot of them we work with. It's how do you manage that process for that change?
Yeah.
And no different. You look at the government and what HSE have also do of when you can't have plastic straws anymore, or plastic cutlery. In your cafe. That's all changed, and they changed that very quickly.
Right.
We never had plastic cutlery here, Iain.
Sorry, of course not. No.
Silverware for this shot.
Yeah, silverware. Didn't quite go with the oysters
and china pots.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, I shot game with steel last week, and unbelievable. Game ball, of course. But they were fantastic. They performed fantastic, and I didn't really see much.
Did you not?
Well,
were you going for the low ones?
Give it a break, you. Attacking me all the time. No, it were a phenomenal performance on them. And I think
Did you notice much difference in the recoil? I mean, I've shot the game ball ones, and I know they are brilliant compared to others. But did you?
I don't think I did. No, I didn't.
And you shot
but
some
what I'm
high
saying is
birds
they're
and
all
things like
obviously
that. They were all, you were happy with it.
And I think
last year was different when I shot them, but this year,
I think the conversations I've had on the clay side with competition clay shooters and the concerns they've got about, and some of them are real concerns, things like ricochet.
That's
it
one
is
of
a
the
real
big
concern.
Genuine,
and we
it is
presented
it is
that.
on shooting grounds, isn't it? I mean, when you look
Exactly.
at that, that's the big. You look at, let's just take if you've got a shooting ground in a quarry or something like that. The ricochet is going to be one of the biggest.
It is a real
problems.
one. And you look at some of the disciplines of skeet, DTL, some of the track disciplines.
And they're a lot louder.
And they are louder, absolutely. And you've got obviously to go through, what sort of chokes can you shoot and can't you shoot. And that's why I think it's always been the important thing to look at transition times and doing it in a responsible way. And the one thing I would say, HSE have been open with it over the years. We've had meetings with them where we brought them to Bisley because some of the people have never been to a shooting ground. They've never seen
they don't
somebody
understand
shoot.
it at all.
Yeah.
And we showed them that. We had some of the British shooting people there showing them what trap shooting is, showing them the disciplines we shoot at the Olympics, to try and get them to understand that it's a sport, it's an Olympic sport, it's not all about shooting game.
Yeah.
And they did listen to that, which was good to their credit. But
good on you for getting them down.
Yeah. Sorry?
Good on you for getting them down to show them exactly what happens.
Yeah.
It's important,
Did
isn't
you have
it?
any choice, or did they say, we are coming?
A bit of both. It was when they turned up with 25 people,
Can you imagine the transition, though, from when we do go from lead to steel? I mean, the one thing I worry about is the competitions, and we're going to have to check everyone's cartridges, aren't we? Because, I wonder how easy it will be.
And that's the bit of once we actually know the black and white detail of any legislation change, that's when we can start putting some dates.
We've got to think
planning.
it's going to take time, isn't it?
And
not being funny, cartridges are expensive, so people aren't going to go, I've bought 10,000 white golds, for example, and they're going to have them then. Now you can't shoot them as of next week. I mean,
and that's not going to happen. And we get those calls, every now and again at the office, and they'll get put through to me or Richard, and people will say, "I'm just about to buy my cartridges for the next season, for my clay shooting season. Am I all right buying 5,000, 10,000 cartridges?"
Do you get that? Yeah.
And we just say, of course you are, absolutely. If you think you're going to shoot that many cartridges in the year, of course you are. Nothing's going to change in a year, 2 years, 3 years. Nothing.
No.
But at least I think we'll have it, as I say, the detail in black and white, and we'll be able to work through. And then we, as a governing body, have got to work with our other associations in clay shooting, the Scottish, the Irish, the Welsh, Northern Ireland. We've got to work with them to turn around and say, right, we've got to have a plan of transition.
I think that must, for people listening, I think probably your reassurance for that is quite warming, actually. Do you know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people out there, they don't, like you said, they are thinking, is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be a year? The fact that you've gone out and said, look, this will take time, and it won't be a year, 2 years, 3 years. I think that's probably, it's positive that, not positive that it's not going to happen, but it's positive that you're saying there is going to be a sensible period so we can all plan around this.
And I think that's going to be the reality, as I say, once it comes out in black and white. And then there's a political phase that it goes through to go to DEFRA. Then it goes to Parliament and would get passed. And that's the bit that will take time, but that's up to the government to do.
Yeah.
And I think then once we get the detail, then it's our responsibility to work out, what we do that's responsible. So you're not waiting to the cliff edge. We've got to work with the cartridge companies and look at, you mentioned noise before.
Yeah.
Steel cartridges are more noisy.
Quite a bit, and I think that could be a problem.
For planning.
And noise for the grounds, and again, we talk about threats to our sport, is the one thing that can shut a ground down.
Yeah.
The main thing, not the one thing. It's the main thing that can affect grounds when you get noise complaints, and it's the thing that grounds are always concerned about.
Biggest, when we run the World Championships, our biggest worry.
Yeah.
Biggest worry, because we've got so many people, and we're off site, of course, on the estate.
Yeah.
And
the villagers don't want to hear it all day long.
No, and I think as soon as, with any of the grounds when we run our championships, even things like we've now shifted to try and finish on Saturdays rather than Sundays. And part of that decision, part of it's to do with the grounds, part of it's to do with shooters actually having a shoot-offs on a Saturday so people haven't used the whole weekend for the shooting. But a lot of it is talking to grounds going, if we don't shoot on a Sunday after a big week of competition, that will help with the locals because at least Sunday will be quiet. And most of our championships now, we're looking at finishing on Saturdays.
It's the biggest kickback we have as a ground. We can't shoot on a Sunday because we can't get planning. We tried to get planning after COVID, for a Sunday, and it was an absolute no-no. And I know other grounds as well that have tried to get planning over the years and have struggled, and then they've wanted to get Sundays and they've dropped Sundays and then they've got planning. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's probably the biggest. It's the one thing which, hey, look, you can understand, can't you? If you're near a village,
100%.
We're only half a mile from a village. Saturdays people are all doing things, aren't they, out and about? But Sunday, if you're going to have a barbecue or going to be doing some fun things in the garden, it's for a lot of people it happens on a Sunday, doesn't it? And it is a noisy sport. And
I mean, here you could argue the motorway is noisier than the shots, but listen,
the motorway which is our biggest saving
definitely,
grace. That is absolutely the case.
It muffles the sound.
And when we do the World Championships, we try and base it not too far from the motorway to muffle that sound because realistically you can't hear it because of the motorway.
And Ian, we spoke earlier about memberships being down a little bit since COVID, but at the minute, certainly through summer, there is registered everywhere on every clay ground from Monday to Sunday. And so while membership must be down, participants must be at all-time high because grounds seem to keep putting these registers on.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the thing of probably coming out of COVID and again back to cost of shooting, cost of living. I think what I'm seeing from the data and the figures, if I look at it, we've obviously got the luxury of having a lot of data, a lot of information. And so you can look at that and see that you're absolutely right. Registered shoots are still healthy. They're still up. Our championships, I think when we did our championships this year, British Open, sold out in 28 minutes.
Unbelievable.
So I think those sort of things, when you look at them, absolutely, if you're a clay shooter, if you're a competitive clay shooter, you're going to keep doing it. So for us, that element's very healthy. I think where we're obviously seeing them drop off is practice. People aren't maybe practicing as much, and that saves them a bit of money. Or sadly, some people have just given up the sport. Either through age, we've got an aging membership as well, and part of that is just again due to price of if you're a young 20-something. With all the other pressures of life, you might have shot when you're a youngster. You sort of see youngsters come up, go through colts, go into juniors, finish university, get their first job, and maybe they stop shooting. But then a lot of them come back to it in their sort of 30s, 40s, 50s.
When they've had the kids and they're happy to go away.
And they've got a bit of money in their pocket. And
that's where the sport's so great, isn't it? There just isn't any barrier to entry at all. And, unlike golf or tennis, for example, or squash, I don't know. But, there's so many other sports. But actually the lovely thing with shooting, as you say, is we see people coming back in at 60 years of age, taking the sport back up again. And they might have done it when they were younger, and now they've got a bit of time on their hands and money, I guess, and, and they want to go back into it. That's what makes the sport so great.
And it is, when we do the game fair, we have our have-a-go line. We get, over 1,000 people through it. 95% of them have never picked up a gun in their lives before. And we get everybody from 12-year-olds through to 90-year-olds coming along. We had a 90-year-old at the game fair this year. It's on my bucket list. Never, ever touched a gun before in my life.
Isn't it? Amazing.
Want to come and do it. And he went round 3 times. We didn't make him queue. And he went round, absolutely loved it, know, and went away sort of going, great, that's one off the list.
Yeah. So. And a big thing that seems to just be more and more topical, years and years ago, prize money and prizes in shooting for majors was, cars or cash, or not maybe years and years ago, quite recently I'd say, wouldn't you? And even the game fairs, you'd win a pickup and it was yours to keep.
Well,
no. This is going to be an interesting answer because I know what he's going to say.
And no, I just want to get a gist onto. For me, sometimes looking on, I'm not a competitor really in clay shooting. I love to do it, but I'm not avid about it. And you look on, and you'll see Mark Windsor, for example, a Krieghoff sponsored shot will win a major.
Yeah,
and he wins a Browning semi-auto. I'm just giving an example. That might have never happened, but. What is the answer to that? And do you feel like people are bothered about how there isn't such a major prize to win a world championship, for example?
Rob's just laughing because he's like,
"What?" I love it. Well, so the honest answer, and I will help you out, is actually, believe it or not, with the majors, more money is won at the majors now than ever before.
I'm sure there is.
So my point would be most of what you've said, which is belief or myth.
Is it?
Yeah. It just isn't true. But that's like any sport, like anything, with social media, with people thinking that, oh yeah, that's true, you don't win anything anymore. And even when I joined and sort of heard that, oh, people win Range Rovers, people win, Rolexes, it's happened once or twice in the past. It wasn't that somebody won a Range Rover every British Open or every championship. They didn't. And then when you look at the prize money of what it was to what it is now, last year at the Worlds, when you take cash and value of prizes, we were at over £100,000 worth of total value. Now, did the winner, who high gun overall, Sam, did he get £100,000? No. But he got a lot more than anyone's been paid in the past.
Yeah.
And he actually got more than they pay, in America. When people talk in America for the Worlds, we actually pay out more than they do.
Wow.
So our prize money is something I'm probably very proud of.
Yeah.
I'm not 5-6 years that I've been in, we've brought.
Have I offended you?
No.
It's really fascinating because it's probably a view.
It is a view
of lots of people,
and people talk about it.
No,
but at the end of the day, it's down to sponsorship.
It is.
And it's down to somebody like Range Rover to go, the World Championship, we need to get behind that. I'm not saying calling any brand out, but it'd be good to get a big brand, wouldn't it, to say, we're going to put a prize up for you guys.
Which, in fairness to Iain, is what you and the CPSA have been working. You've got better sponsorship now of your regular competitions.
More sponsorship than we've ever had before.
Yeah.
The hurdle.
I can see
always, that. When you look across, whether it's gun sponsors, cartridge sponsors, clothing sponsors, from Browning, from our gun sponsor, Ely is a headline, sponsor for cartridges, Showful as a headline sponsor for clothing, SWATCOM was a headline sponsor. And when I say headline sponsor, it means they sponsor all our majors, and they put in cash into the prize fund, and they put in product for the prize fund, and we split it between class and category. And 5-6 years ago, we had almost none of that.
Right.
So now that the hurdle is, and when you look at all those names I've just reeled off, all of them are
good plug, by the way.
Within
That's
the
your
shooting
plug
industry.
of the one. That one's good.
Are within the shooting. The problem is I'll get in trouble when I've missed out.
You've missed
Team.
out.
I've missed out.
There are loads.
You've had your chance now.
Peeler, I've missed out.
Game ball.
I'll rack all those in one by one. B and P. I'll just go through. So the hurdle is getting somebody in, as you've mentioned, from outside the industry, which I've tried. I think I go back to my interview. That was one of the things I put forward of, I will bring somebody in from outside the industry. If the board wanted to review me, they'd go, you've done great with bringing in sponsorship.
7 years on.
But this promise
you've just identified. You've reminded us, Iain.
Yeah. I'm sure some of them are listening. And they'll turn around and go, but you haven't brought in Virgin Media. You haven't brought in Red Bull. You haven't brought in McLaren or Range Rover. Why? And that's because, sadly, we're in the shooting industry, in the shooting sport. And companies that I've talked to, and from my last company, I dealt with a lot of big international companies, a lot of automotive companies, and every single one of them have turned around and said, we can't be involved in the shooting industry. And sadly, that's a fact. Even so...
Very sadly.
But even so, I'll give you an example. Even in... I spoke with the NSCA. We work very closely with our counterparts in America who run the Worlds every other year with us as a partnership. Even they have almost no outside sponsorship deals outside of the shooting industry, even in America.
Wow.
So even when they've talked to people like Ford, or they've talked to other clothing, anybody from outside, it's a real challenge for them. And they're based in Texas.
Yeah. Where most of the pickups are wrapped in camouflage.
Yeah. So I think that is a challenge, but it's not one we've given up on.
No.
It's just an ongoing...
I think your thing about the prize fund, for regular registered, that might be the case. I think because of course, when you run a registered shoot, you offer 2 classes. So there's birds only,
unregistered,
or there's obviously the competition. So, and for that, most of us, we do, and lots of others, it's £5 more money. And that £5 goes into the prize pot.
Yeah.
But you've got an awful lot of people now, if it's £45 or £40, they go, actually, do you know what? I'm not going to win. Mark Windsor's here, whoever it might be, a great shot. I'm not going to win, so I'm just going to pay £40 instead of 45.
Yeah.
Which means lots of people make that decision. So they have 100 people. Instead of having £5, that's £500 in the prize pot if everybody did it.
Right.
And then it's broken down between class.
And that's optional for them to
That's
put.
optional. You don't have to.
And that's in our rules.
One of the rules,
Right.
isn't it?
You have an option. I mean, interesting, when I first started, I went round and spoke to
And this is a big contentious issue, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Lots
so
of people
talk about prize money, and I think, Rob, that's a really good point. That when you look at prize money within our championships, that's something different.
Yeah,
that's and I think it is a really good point, because the sort of myth or the word out there is, the prize money is not very good, and that probably, you're absolutely right.
I think it comes from that.
From registered shoots.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting down with, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, with Iain Coley when I first started. And was talking to him about the sport, his ground, his experience, the Olympic, all those things. And one of the things, I sort of said, what would you change in the sport? And he turned around and said, prize money in the sport. He said, because on a Sunday night, the issues that will come up over £20, £30, £50 at a registered shoot are all to do with a very, very small amount of prize money. Which is reality. You get a couple of 100 shooters there. If every single person put £5 in, you're still in that. And then you've got to pay out down the classes, category.
Yeah.
So it soon gets filtered down, you see. And that's where I think that comes from. The interesting thing with the majors, you don't allow, now you changed the rule, didn't you? So in the past, you could
your
enter
entry
a major.
fee is your entry fee.
Yeah, but if you're in the competition, you're in the competition.
Yeah, but you could, in the old days, but it wasn't that long ago, was it?
Probably only 3 years
ago.
It was optional.
You could enter the British Open, but pay a birds only price.
Right.
Whereas that's all changed now, and I suppose
that
seems
price.
Correct for me.
Yeah, one price. You're in the competition.
Yeah.
And everybody, if we've got 1,300 people there, and we're putting £10 in from the prize fund. You've got 13 grand in the prize fund. And then we add to it from obviously the sponsors.
Yeah.
So that's how it builds up, and we might have 30, 40
And a lot of people go on about America, and but America, they do the whole, you can bet against yourself, don't you? So there's the
That's
options.
different again, the options
They do an
system,
options system in America, so you can, it's huge. You can pay, can't you, or back yourself to win the competition. And if you enter the options, then there's quite a
place.
Or
you can place in your category or class.
Yeah.
So it's quite, I don't understand. I'll be honest, I don't understand it at all.
I don't.
But we've had we talked about it, didn't
Yeah.
we? About having it at the Worlds as a sort of get somebody in to run the option booth.
Right.
The Americans would love it.
Like the bookie at the races.
That's exactly what it is.
Exactly what they do.
Tweedl will do that.
Yeah.
But it is, and the other thing.
But I don't think they don't make any money out of it. It all goes.
Just goes to the prize.
It all goes into the prize fund for the individual. So I think you can. I don't know enough about it. So I was going to say I think you can only take your options out on yourself, can't you? I don't think I couldn't go, because otherwise everybody would want to do Richard Folds, for example, or something like that. So it's so a lot of them go out there and they can make big money because obviously the very good shots will bet on themselves to win, and if they do win, they get their options and all that.
Yeah. And I think when you look at, I know the US, they've just had the Nationals, their big, Nationals competition last week, where they have over 2,000 people shooting.
Yeah.
And the prize money there was big. I think Brandon won like $20,000.
Wow.
So it's a big prize. But the cost of their competitions is a lot more. So they're putting more into the prize fund.
Yeah.
But that's all accepted in America. Shooting in America is a lot more expensive.
It is expensive. I mean,
clay shooting in America is a lot more expensive than shooting here.
Yeah. Wow.
It is. I mean, cartridges are circa £700, £800, £1,000.
Flipping out.
Oh yeah, no, it's and to enter the majors, I mean, it's double the money to enter a major here.
Right.
Yeah. But it's a different. I remember somebody else telling me that what you've got to consider is that clay shooting in America is like your game shooting in the UK.
Yeah.
That's how it's seen
relative,
as a sport.
When you see the size of their motorhomes and their
I've seen it.
They go around in their Polaris, all kitted out with alloy wheels and lights and everything, gun racks and coffee machines.
I mean, I was at M&M this year for the Worlds, Anthony's ground, and there was all the people in buggies. And if I'm walking around, the amount of times people will stop and just ask you, is your buggy broken down? Because you're walking. And there was a couple of people driving around in smart cars. They were all wrapped, and they had gun racks in the back of them, sort of customized. And when I spoke to one of them, he just turned around and said, "Oh no, I just don't want a golf buggy. I've had one of those, so I got a smart car."
It's a lot warmer in here.
And and he said it's air conditioned.
Yeah.
I can keep all my stuff in it. I put it on the back of the trailer and go home.
So
it's a different
place
shooting in
proper
America
American,
is a different world.
Is there a lot we can learn from American shooting?
Yeah, I think there is, and I sort of select. I mean, I've sort of lived and worked over there a couple of times in the sports industry, so I sort of. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're fantastic. You mentioned about just how they market their competitions.
Yeah.
They're American. They're very good at selling.
Yeah.
Very good at promoting. So there's always stuff we can learn from them. Big and small. Like even the things how they do their prize presentations. Some of that actually they probably don't do as well as we do. To
right.
be honest. Trophy presentations, they're short, sharp, in, out, done.
Yeah.
But things like when they do their big evenings that they do, their food and beer evenings, very communal, very their shoot-offs are good. They have fireworks, music. So I think there's definitely things we can always learn from that. And I work really closely with the NSCA. Which is great.
Doing stuff like that on an evening, though, will be down to the size of the ground, won't it, to handle camper vans and...
It does, but also you've got to remember in America, when they have a competition, obviously America's so big that everybody travels and goes and stays there.
Yeah.
The problem we've got in the UK,
because
we're relatively small, that a lot of our shooters might come down. If you live in Birmingham or even north of Birmingham,
you come down,
2
shoot
hours,
and go
you
home.
can be here, you shoot and you go back, and then you might come back the next day.
Yeah.
Whereas there, everybody's there, they're all staying in hotels, so the whole fun, and that's what gets these wonderful evenings with loads of people there. And we've tried all sorts, haven't we, over the years, and we've not mastered it. And
I remember the World Championship where I had the Defender here, so 2020 or 21.
Yeah.
And you put the football on the big screen in the field.
Yeah.
And after the shoot-off, there was nobody came back over here.
Nobody.
It was me and all the Churchills staff having a beer.
It
was great, but you put that on for the shooters and no one attended.
And they don't.
That's always the challenge of, even if it's our championships with prize givings, and we've, again, not giving up on it. We've just got to look at what else can we do to get people there. We've, done raffles.
And you've changed the rules, haven't you?
Yes,
with the prize giving.
Yeah, that you've got to be there to get your prizes.
So if you want your prize, if you win a gun or whatever, whatever it might be, or cartridges, you only get them if you're there to try and incentivise people to stay and hang around.
And I think that's respectful to the sponsors.
Yeah.
That's the reason. The main reason we did it, because we don't want a podium that's got nobody on there. But then we do raffles with, again, our sponsors who'll put prizes in. So we'll give people tickets, and everybody that's there, we'll draw them out, and you could win a pair of Le Chameau wellies, or you could win some meaningful prizes to try and get people there. But as you say, I think the culture here is, come to the shoot, go home.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, one of the things that came up when we were in America, I won't embarrass him by saying, but one of the England team went off to the free bar. Well, it was an igloo beer chest full of ice and beer, and took like 5 cans of free beer out of there and said, "Why can't you do this in England, Ian, at the championships?" And I had to remind him that when we did the shoot-off, the super final down here, it wasn't a beer chest. There was a full bar down there.
Cocktails and everything.
With cocktails, with whatever you wanted, staffed by, the EJ team, with 400 chairs or whatever it was, and everyone could have a drink.
But no one attended.
Well, they did.
No, they did.
No,
they did.
Oh, God, yeah, it was.
No, it's full.
There
It
must
was
have been
packed.
600 people.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it
well,
was
that's the key. Give away free booze.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
they will come.
They will come
That's
if you give
really
away
good
free
idea,
booze.
Ian. Maybe we need to think of a sponsor for our beer, for the World Champions, sponsored by
The
Tweedl.
Tweedl Bar.
Yeah, there you go. You see.
So, and I think those things. I think I get back to the thing of people just forget, or they just love to put that point across.
Yeah.
It's either better over there or
Look,
it's better here. But
whether people like it or not, as well, everybody just can't keep the shooting industry. You can't keep putting its hand in the pocket all the time. People have to pay for that. In America, they have a pizza evening and drinks evening, but as we said, the entries are double the price.
Yeah.
So. And we've had these conversations, haven't we? We've said, hey, we can do free food one night. It's not a problem. We do free food every night. But the entries are going to be double the amount of money. And then people go, oh, I don't want to pay the money. So it's really hard. So from the CPSA and us as a ground owner, we're trying to get a balance that gives an amazing competition, but equally keeps the entry
happy.
fees a little sensible as well.
And I think for me, I go back to my sort of product thing. I look at the Worlds, I look at any of our competitions, I look at our membership as a product. How do we make it better year on year? And it might be a small increment, but it's got to be better than it was last time.
Yeah.
It's got to be better than it was last year. And that's definitely, we've got a meeting tomorrow with the team, my team and Rob's team to go through the Worlds for next year. We're already, I think this is the third meeting.
I was going to say, it must be the third or fourth.
Of going through, and you're into the nitty gritty detail of one of the most contentious things at the Worlds is always, Rob,
Parking.
is exactly parking.
And how are you going to get shooters from A to B?
It's just incredible that people can get so upset about where they park their car. But we've got to be aware of it and what can we do about it.
Yeah.
But, same thing with the booking on process. We've got we go live. Got to get it right. We changed it. I think it's on the 8th of December. For the Worlds, and obviously everyone's used to it selling out very quickly. So we've got a few changes this year.
Are you allowed to tell us about those changes, Ian, or not? Yeah.
We'll be launching. No problem. We'll be basically inviting, having people who are in the top 20, within class, within our top 20 ranking structure. So we'll be sending out, invites to people so they can book on early. And what that will do will ensure that our top shots, have an opportunity. They're not getting it for free or anything, no different than that. They're just going to get the opportunity to book on early.
Why is it just for the top shots?
Well, from a point of view of, what we want as a world championship, we don't want a situation where Mark Windsor or George Digweed or Richard Folds aren't there because they didn't log on at 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
It's a world championship at the end of the day.
Okay.
So we thought long and hard about it, and we didn't want to turn around and sort of say, right, we'll just invite, everybody, or we'll sell extra spaces. We'll do, we had all conversations about, we'll have a premium level, or we'll have a, sort of, what do they call it with the Oasis concert tickets with dynamic pricing?
Oh, right.
We didn't quite get into that. But I think it shouldn't be a cost thing. It should be. So we looked at, how could we do it? We have our annual rankings across all our disciplines, but specifically for sporting.
Yeah.
We look at the top 20 and then also looking at, top 10 in class as well. So those people, down. So even if you're a C-class shooter, but you're in the top 10, and then you get an invite. Now, you don't have to go.
No.
It's up to you whether you do it. And even if some of the top, I can guarantee some of the top 20 will probably shift delete the email. And then we'll go, why haven't they booked on yet? So,
thinking it's
things
spam?
Like that. It's things like that we're going to do. That again, it's a small change to make sure that the competition has got the top shots there.
Yeah.
And to reward them. And even if you're a C-class shooter, if you've invested in the sport, and you've shot and you've got in the top 10, it's a small little thank you. The England team is another thing that the England team will get an invite as well because they've supported the England team.
Yeah, rightly so.
Yeah.
And what have you seen over your 7 years in? What are the biggest changes you've seen within the industry and the sport?
Good question. I'd probably say that I'd probably say the focus on the legal side of things, it's become a lot more apparent. Mm-hmm. It's what people are, members are interested in. They've become a lot more aware of it. The social media side, I'm not the biggest fan of social media at all. No. I think it does a lot of damage in our sport. Sadly, most of the complaints we get in about members, about grounds, are all because of Sunday night arguments on social media. And for me, the issue there isn't probably the actual argument, it's what it does to the image of our sport. Back to the thing of going to talk to Land Rover or talking to Jaguar or talking to a clothing company or even a beer company.
If you see somebody giving out obscenities on social media, how are you supposed to?
We came very close to a deal with an energy drink company. A year after I'd started, I'd got a past relationship with them. We got very close to that, having them as a headline sponsor, bringing in money, coming to the events, everything. They did a social media check on us, a marketing analysis, and they came back to me and said, Iain, sorry, we can't be involved with your sport.
Wow. Is that right? That's a shame, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we sort of...
And it's something that you can't control.
I can't control it.
There's nothing you can do.
I go back to when I do my regional AGMs and update people on the association, update people on the sport, our members, and every single year I turn around and sort of not read the riot act, but sort of say, look, if there's one thing you can do to help us as an association, just be careful, be mindful of what you do and say on social media. The other thing, if you just want to take it personally, not care about the sport or go, I can say what I want, is think personally, because when you come for your renewal now, one of the things the police do is check your social media. And if you're arguing on and being, defamatory and causing arguments, being aggressive on social media, the police will look at it.
And you can sort of understand it in a way, can't you?
Absolutely. Some of the tragedies that have happened, in the last couple of years, the police have looked at social media afterwards, or people, have looked at it afterwards and said, surely this was obvious, this was going to happen. So, that's probably one of the things that I think social media for the sport has been a big change over the years. It's done some good, but sadly, I think it's done a lot of bad.
A lot of bad as well. Fantastic. Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Iain.
That was painless.
That was pretty painless, wasn't it? You look like you're relieved that it's sort of you've got through it and everything else. Well, I think we should just say thank you. I mean, Iain's done wonders for us.
Absolutely.
Absolute wonders. And the CPSA, it's amazing. The CPSA gets a lot of stick in the UK, and everyone goes, in America they do this. I've been very lucky to have gone to America several times because we're always trying to learn what they do and everything else. You go to America, they think we're a leading light. They think the CPSA are as well. And so, which is true, isn't it? And it's hard for him to say it, but I can say it. And, and I think you and the team do a great job. And, and I think...
But I understand why, and I think the team understand why. It is, it is one of those things. We've got a thankless job partly, but we're the government of the sport.
Of course.
So no one's really going to, and it is really nice when people come in, and even if we've got 1,300 people shooting at the bridge, for the one or two people that come in and thank the ladies on the desk,
it means the world.
Thank the referees. It does mean the world, and it does happen. And we do get letters in from people who've shot their first championship, and they come in and send a letter in of thanks. I mean, and that's great. But it's few and far between. But we've kind of been around over 100 years. Nearly 100 years as the CPSA. So we're sort of used to it by now.
It's been fantastic. Thank you very much, Iain. Thank you for coming on. Really kind.
Thanks for coming on, Iain.
Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. Perfect. That rounds it up. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe the Tweedl Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. Thanks to our sponsor, Gamebot, and we will see you on the next one. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Take care.